Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, November 11th, 2019 Education Committee and supplementary regular board meeting. Since we are not taking any action items, we're not taking a vote on anything this evening. We're going to go through the presentations and then we'll have audience recognition. At the end of the meetings, people can ask questions about the presentations or whatever else they would like to ask questions or make comment on. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Tonight, after a lot of hard work by our secondary supervisors and staff and assistant superintendent, we're pleased to announce or to provide you with an update on new courses at our high schools. These courses go along with our commitment and our strategic plan to make sure that we've got student choice, that we've got student voice, and that we have a transformative curriculum. So with that, Dr. Everslog, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You said it all. My first two slides, you captured it all. So we can move right to slide 3 this evening. So I'm pleased to share with you that we have several new courses that are being offered or they're being proposed in 4 different departments throughout the secondary experience. I'm going to begin by speaking of art, talking about the art department, and then Mr. Lilly will talk about math and science, and Dr. Pratt will talk about English. So in our art program, we currently have a course titled AP Studio Art, and that course has been somewhat of a catch-all course for AP Studio Art, mostly for students that are interested in studio art in the 2D medium. In a rare instance where the College Board aligns with our philosophy, and they had some shifts in their programming that align with some of our needs in the department. So they are no longer offering the course in AP Studio Art, which is good for us because we are seeing many students in our 3D art program that have not pursued the studio art as a possibility at the AP level. And so we are proposing the addition of AP 3D Art and Design and AP 2D Art and Design and sunsetting the course AP Studio Art. So to give you a little picture of what that looks like currently, the course does support students in 2D and 3D art because we make it work, but the course is technically designed as it is AP Studio Art for students in 2D medium. So they are no longer offering that course, and College Board is splitting AP Studio Art into 3 courses, drawing, 2D design, and 3D design. And so what we propose to do is to have 2 separate courses on the book. The AP 2D Art and Design, both 2D and 3D are courses that are year-long courses, they're elective courses. There are major aspects of the course that involve investigation, creation, and presentation of art. The difference, of course, is the medium. 2D focuses on graphic design, photography, collage, printmaking. And the 3D, which is really our students in our program, our metal students and our ceramic students. We have a tremendous metals program and students that are putting out amazing work in the metals particularly, but also metal ceramics, sculpture, architectural models, and glasswork could be offered at our AP 3D Art and Design. Another issue that this resolves for us is students have now the ability to take both courses. So if a student was interested in drawing and metals, for example, they could only have taken in the past Studio Art, AP Studio Art once. Now they have the opportunity to take both courses, 2D and 3D. So that is the art proposal. What we'd like to do is just take questions on each of the departments. So we'll talk art first, and then we'll move on to computer science next. Any questions about the art proposal?
Just quickly, and this question will carry over through all these recommendations. Are they going to be equally available at both high schools? And before you answer, you're going to offer it, and then there's only going to be 2 kids because there's not enough kids to fill the full contingent, so you're not going to run it. You're going to say there wasn't enough interest, but the reality is there's competing offerings that, because the school's smaller, are not going to be able to fill the course. So how are you going to make sure that these are available to both kids at both schools?
He's going to get to that in the case of, I think it's one course, we're recommending that it doesn't start at both schools at the same time. I guess to the other point, if there is enough students to populate the course in one school, but for whatever reason there's not interest in the other, the only alternative is to not run it in the one where there is the interest, or we would try and maintain the interest in the other school, but that does happen from time to time.
Right, but a lot of times the reasons why that happens, we saw it with physics, because at LM, all the students were AP students, all the top competitive students were AP students, and at Harrington they were IB and AP, and they couldn't fill both different physics courses because so many of those students were committed to IB. It wasn't that they weren't interested; that it was they couldn't get the students because there was this other pull on them. And I guess especially with this particular one, if there's a way to run both the 3D and the 2D in the same classroom.
We've done that. I don't know.
There are ways to. I would hate to lose the opportunity because we say there's not interest when really there's interest, but it's a singleton there are a lot of and you lived this. There's a lot of reasons why.
The art department is a great example of they take the student requests and we build a schedule around those needs, and in many cases are combining classes so that students can differentiate their experiences in a classroom. That's what we're doing right now in the studio art class. This particular edition, we're a lot of confidence that it's going to be able to run at both schools. There's a tremendous amount of interest, and the medals programs are both very strong across the district.
Wouldn't you say it's easier to do that in some courses than it is in others?
Yes.
Yeah. In this particular class with this particular teacher, I can go into that class at almost any time, and I'm like, where'd all these people come from? And some of them are students who just drop in on their frees, and they're working in there. So it's our intent, with the exception of one course that he'll get to, that course will phase in to the other school.
Okay. This time we'll turn it over to Mr. Lilly, who will talk about our computer science proposals.
Thank you, everyone. I'm excited to talk about our new computer science hopeful offerings. I do want to address one thing that you see here that maybe some people are questioning, and that's that these are considered math offerings. So just to clarify that, right now the state of Pennsylvania requires a math certification in order to teach computer science. Many other states have moved to a computer science certification for teaching. Pennsylvania is going in that direction. I actually recently met with St. Joe's. They're going to be one of the first colleges offering the certification. So we're doing our best and our due diligence to keep on top of what that certification will look like. But on the other hand, they're wanting to know what actually do schools at the high school level teach in regards to computer science. So we're kind of doing a little back and forth there, but really trying to help each other out with where is this going, because we know that change is coming. So computer science was traditionally focused on coding and programming. Through most of our high school experiences, there was probably one computer class that a math teacher taught somewhere, and it was either around BASIC or Pascal, and maybe, C or C++ or C++ eventually, but there was one class that was on programming and coding, and it was always a math teacher that somehow ended up teaching that class, because that was also likely the computer lab or the computer room at the same time. So a lot has changed, but now the computer focus has turned more towards the impact of computer science and technology on the world. So that's the change. It's not all about coding and programming, even though we hear those words all the time, coding and coding and coding, but coding is really programming, but coding and programming are what changed the world. So the emphasis has changed a little bit to focus more on how that affects the world around us. Now, that said, the students of today likely are not going to experience something like the movie The Matrix or iRobot, where machines learn and try to take over the world. But the reality is, 100 years ago was 1920. And in 1920, the new technologies were cars, planes, the washing machine, and the refrigerator. So just to put that in perspective, 100 years from now, it's really hard to imagine what the world will be like. So that's what we're trying to prepare kids for. Three years ago, I stood in front of the board and asked if we could offer a computer science seminar course. And at that time, that was because students were exhausting our current offerings, and we had students who were interested in taking additional computer classes, and we just didn't have any to offer. So we moved in that direction. So now 3 years later, we have the same problem. We have kids who have exhausted our computer science offerings, and they're very much interested in taking other things. We hear them, and that's part of why we're here tonight. One of the things that we definitely want to include here with these offerings is that we recognize students are coming to us better prepared than they were even 3 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. The availability of computer science courses, open source courses online, they've become readily available. So we have a lot of kids that are self-teaching, even through YouTube, self-teaching themselves how to code and program. So when we talk about the beginning computer science course, which historically here had been Computer Science 1, we realized that we have students who are coming to us that already have that background. So we're trying to find ways to meet those needs and offer them something that's going to immediately help them grow. This is a map of what the old and the new computer science offerings would look like. Anything you see on this map that does not have a red star, that's what we currently offer. So right now in our current sequence, we have Comp Sci 1 and 2. Those are both semester courses, so together that makes up 1 year. Students then transition to AP Computer Science A. That course is all about coding and programming. And then they can move to the Comp Sci Seminar course, which was the one that we adopted 3 years ago. So that's what we currently have. If you take notice, that only covers 3 years of time. So students who begin in their freshman year taking our computer science offerings do exhaust the available courses after 3 years. The places where you see the red stars, those are new offerings. So you will see in the purple, there's a new entry point, which is called AP Computer Science Principles. And you see 2 new exit points, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. If you notice, they're on level with our current computer science seminar course at the other end and on level at the beginning with Comp Sci 1 and 2. We are just taking into account that in the beginning, kids have a different background, and on the back end of this whole thing, students have different places or levels of interest with how far they want to pursue computer science and its applications. So you see differences at the beginning and differences on the end. AP Computer Science Principles is that new entry point. And I want to highlight that that is available to students in grades 9 through 12. So at any point in a high school career for a student, they can choose to investigate computer science through this course. Now, the difference in AP Computer Science Principles in comparison to Comp Sci 1 and Comp Sci 2, those Comp Sci 1 and 2 courses really do focus on coding and programming. It's intro-level coding and programming. Computer Science Principles is more of a survey course, so it dabbles in a little bit of everything. The topics in that course include things like networking, hardware, software integration, analyzing and translating data, and developing algorithms. There is one unit in that course that's dedicated to coding and programming, so it's still there, but it's a little bit of everything. So that initial idea that I shared about how computer science is changing, it's not just about coding and programming, it's about what that does and the impact that has on the world around us. So that is an AP course. The College Board has also recognized in this case that computer science does go above and beyond just coding. Cybersecurity is one of those courses that's on the back end. This is a course that's on par with our seminar course. It is a semester elective. It does follow Comp Sci A, AP Computer Science A. So in order to access a cybersecurity course, you do have to have a strong background in coding. Cybersecurity is about exploring the world, the cyber world, and documented cyber attacks. You know, these things happen all the time. They actually happen daily. There are lots of people in the world that think it's a good idea to hold companies and school districts at bay by taking over their computer systems. That's real. It's a problem that the world faces. Cybersecurity, people who understand cybersecurity, that is the most in-demand job in the world today, is people to defend and prevent companies and businesses from having to succumb to a cyber attack. So this course would allow students to explore some of the things that have happened. It also allows them to explore ways to prevent and manage these type of things. So that's what cybersecurity is all about. The other semester elective we have at the end of our sequencing is artificial intelligence and machine learning. You know, when I hear that title, that's where I think of things like iRobot. This is about how we teach machines to learn, and then once we've taught machines to learn, what impact does that have on our world as we know it? An example of something like this would be a dark warehouse. Warehouses where there's no lights on anywhere in the warehouse, it's completely dark, the whole thing is run by robots. They know where everything is, they know how to get there, they don't run into each other, there's a grid on the floor, they just know how to navigate the whole thing. That is due to artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's funny, I actually saw on the new iPhone website, they highlight the ability of their camera to learn automatically and adjust to the environment around it. So they highlight artificial intelligence and machine learning as one of the features of the new phone. When we think about this, and I know I brought up iRobot, one of the things that this course does discuss is the ethics behind doing things like that. So when you decide you're going to teach machines to learn, we better know whether that's a good idea or not, especially for what we're trying to teach them to do. So at this point, I would take questions around computer science.
Thanks. I have a question. I just want to clarify. Can you go to the, where it shows which classes you can take?
The map?
Sure. So in order to take these, the cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, do you have to take AP Computer Science A?
You do.
Okay, so it only goes through those classes. So, and then a question about the cybersecurity class. So it's a big issue at the institution where I teach about teaching classes like this, because they don't actually want students connected to the
Practicing your skills on the.
well, they don't want to have, especially if they're using open source data and stuff, so I assume that's been all worked out. That must be something.
Even now, we have kids in the seminar course, and some of those kids are interested in computer science, so one of the things we're working on with our tech department is to have a standalone server that doesn't connect to anything else, and we can hack in and out of that or defend it, that kind of thing. So,
well, ironically, what we ended up doing was giving everybody their own laptops. That was the only way we would be able to, and then do the server. So I guess you're ahead. So I guess, I'll open up in a second. I think this all looks really great. encourage maybe to think, is there some kind of, applications course or something that could be potentially introduced that didn't actually require going through the AP course? Like, is there I'm not talking about instead of these courses, but in addition to these courses, something that could be, like more of an introductory level course where you could learn some of, say, some skills, programming skills, or whatever it is you were teaching, some data science skills that could be applied in potentially even a more, could be, I don't know, it could be health applications or just something that perhaps students who are not necessarily likely to go through an AP computer science course might be interested in. For future consideration of ways of kind of expanding, because I think there's so much that the, obviously computer science and data science and kinds of things are offering to students that would want to make sure that kids would be able to get some of that, some exposure to that sort of outside of, these are very high level classes from what I'm.
Yeah, I mean,
if
it's
you
something we
guys
can
have considered
certainly,
that.
we can certainly consider that in the future.
So, but I'm sorry, are there other questions? Go ahead, Lori. Sorry.
This all looks really, really cool, and I appreciate the evolution away from pure coding, because I feel like a lot of kids may be like, I'm not into coding, but like the bigger philosophy and the bigger strategy behind computer science, I think could be appealing. So I have two questions. One is, and ignore my ignorance, but how many kids now take the AP or want to take or are qualified to take an AP computer science class like sophomore year? Are there kids that come in who double up on computer science, or can they, and, are trying to opt in early to this stuff?
Based on the sequence we have right now, you really can't do that. We only have the 3 different offerings. So CompSci 1 and 2 are sequential, and they're the foundation for the CompSci A.
Okay,
And then that, you need CompSci A to be able to access the seminar course.
okay. And my second question is, I love how you pointed out in your chart that you can grow community and university connections around these 2 seminar courses, because I see at the university where I am, there's an incredible amount of these things going on. So I just wanted to hear a little more about that. And it's fine if you don't quite know what that is yet, but any thoughts you have?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. Right now in our seminar course, one of the things that they do is called the Code Design Story. And they partner with people from all over the community, colleges, and local businesses. The computer science seminar course right now is geared towards app design. So the students develop apps, and then they have a mentor who is from the community that works closely with them, and then they go through sort of a Shark Tank sort of presentation where they talk about their app. They have to explain what makes their app different than one of the ones already available on the market. And some of the apps have been so good that the mentors and the companies that help facilitate them are very interested in acquiring them. So it's pretty neat, and we do a big presentation. We have them all come in. We do it in the LGI next door in the high school, at Lower Marion High School. But that's the kind of thing we're talking about, and those partnerships just continue to grow every year.
Okay. And if there's a time when you're looking for stakeholders in the community to get involved or who can help with connections, we can find out about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank
Go
you.
ahead. Thanks, Lori.
So just 2 questions. So my understanding is that an AP course is basically a course that one could take as a college freshman, and it's that level of rigor. And do we have any concerns about offering to freshmen an AP course with that kind of rigor? Are we confident that they're going to be able to handle that with the rest of their other, like, they might love the computers and be happy in it, but, you know, if it's a heavy load, then it's a big burden on the transition to high school with the other courses that they also have to complete. So do we have any, I mean, are there any concerns about this AP course being available to freshmen?
I can speak to that. The AP Computer Science Principles course is actually designed to come before the Comp Sci A. It's designed as a survey/entry-level course. That's why there's only one unit on coding. It explores all kinds of different things. So this actually was designed by College Board to be a beginner computer science type of course.
Right, but that could be junior and senior year rather than freshman year. I mean, like, you know, computer science, AP Computer Science junior year, Computer Science A senior year. You know, I understand that it's a survey course, but, you know, generally AP courses have heavy loads associated with them, and I'm concerned with freshmen and their other course loads, whether we're comfortable. So, I mean, do you have any idea what the workload is going to be for this course?
I could talk into that a little bit. There is obviously a curriculum that we would be held to because it's a College Board course, but this course, while it does have an assessment at the end like all AP courses do, a component of that, a big chunk of that, is actually a project the kids do throughout the year. So they're doing work over time, and that project piece is part of the coding unit. So they have kind of coding built in throughout the whole course, even though it's not the emphasis of each individual unit. So it's split. It's not just content and then a test at the end. It's content and project, and then both pieces at the other end. So it looks a little different than a traditional AP course.
Right, that actually makes me a little more nervous because that means that their load is heavier throughout the whole year. But I'll just leave it at, you know, maybe to Scott, that we be really careful that we don't overload the kids too much, allowing them to take an AP course as a freshman. My other question is, and I don't know anything about the teachers we have in the buildings who teach computers, but I just want to piggyback on a comment that you made, that often the computer people are math teachers who have been, you know, converted to computer teachers. These are pretty serious courses. I think that it's great that they're going to be offered. I think our kids there's probably a lot of interest in them. But I also think that means we have a responsibility to make sure that we have computer science teachers, not converted math teachers. And we may. I have no idea what our baseline is at this point. But you know, I'd hate to see a teacher teaching this course who's, you know, learning Python on the weekends.
Yeah.
So you know, I just ask that we keep that in mind.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Diane, while we were watching this presentation at CCOB, I was thinking to myself, I don't even know why we have this in the math department. This is really something different. And then Jason, as he got towards the end of the presentation, said, by the way, they're moving this sort of outside the math department. And I think you were saying that right now, to teach the course, you have to be either a math teacher or a computer science teacher. Isn't that correct?
Right now, in Pennsylvania, you have to be a math teacher.
Okay. So I thought there was a separate computer science cert.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's not there yet. So I would argue that that the Pennsylvania Department of Education is kind of lagging behind in still seeing this as mainly math. And in fact, during the presentation, I asked, how much math do you actually need to know for the higher level computer science courses? And what did he say?
It's honestly more logic and
Yeah.
coding and programming is really what it comes down to, is knowing how things talk to each other. It's not
So-
so much heavy math.
One of the
Yeah, at
things.
least it's not business teachers. I mean, it used to be business ed teachers who were kind of thrown into the computer. I mean, that was always.
Before my time, in Fortran. One of the things that, I just wanted to further go on and say, one of the things also that I've asked for Dr. Everslag is to work with Mr. Marta so that we have on a yearly basis a very robust conversation. Now that we're moving to more selection for students, a robust conversation with guidance counselors. So the guidance counselors have a very in-depth understanding of what's involved in these courses so that they can guide students. I'm thinking of females, and I'm thinking of underrepresented minorities into these programs. Not that they can't handle the math, but it's not necessarily in that direction. And so that people, not just for these, but we'll talk even more about it in terms of the English courses, that there's a real robust understanding by all the guidance department about that too.
Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to probably piggyback on what you just said, Mr. Copeland, and I realize this is high school level, but and as we're doing the 5 to 8 realignment, are we looking at our middle school so that kids are getting some prep to this in the middle school so they can hit ninth grade ground running? I definitely appreciate that they're self-taught at home, but I'd like to see, the 5 to 8 to extent, maybe not ready for this today, but having the 5 to 8, because I think something of what you just said, Bob, was there's a point where you can reach a kid of interest, and if you miss that interest, picking it up in 9th, 10th, 11th grade might be a little too late.
Very much working on the concept of designing what our expectations around technology are. So what does every kid when they leave 5th grade need to know? What does every kid when they leave 8th grade need to know, and so forth? And also, we talked a little bit about this last week, understanding that the development of the computer science program is going to be a yearly thing, because it's not like you can wait for a computer cycle or a curriculum cycle. You have to go back to that. All of the push that we've had over the last several years with Nancy Ocasio-Mesa in the elementary schools is getting that cohort of STEM teachers involved, and they have been very strong advocates for all kinds of STEM activities in the elementary schools. We've looked at revamping the middle school too, in terms of the computer program. So that's an ongoing process, right on target with your comments.
Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead, Deborah.
I asked this last week, but it might be good to, just bring it out here. How you are going to work on bringing in females, diverse, how to diversify the makeup of the classes, maybe kind of target students who may not think of themselves as somebody who might be interested in this, but maybe the teacher sees something in them and wants to do a little inviting.
Sure. That's something that has been ongoing. I think one of the things that probably hasn't changed a whole lot in the 20, 30 years that computer science courses have been taught is that those teachers tend to recruit really hard to get kids to want to take the computer classes. So that still is going on. We have tried to make a concerted effort to involve more female students and students of color. When I was making the presentation 3 years ago, we were maybe at 10 to 15% makeup, and now we're at about 33% are female and students of color. So in the 3 years alone, we've made pretty big jumps in the number of students who are taking those courses now that are female or students of color. Interestingly enough, the AP Computer Science Principles course is actually touted by College Board as a course that has dramatically increased the interest and access for females and students of color, because it's not just a coding or programming course, it's a little bit of everything, and that seems to have generated a much bigger or broader interest across the board. So it's ongoing, but it's something we're very conscious of and aware of, and we really, really are trying to make efforts to increase those numbers.
Thank you very much. I really know we all appreciate the presentation and the work that you're doing on this. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, well, with that, I'm going to transition to myself for environmental science. So environmental science is a full-year course offered for students who have completed biology. This course is being offered at the college prep level. We do currently have AP Environmental Science as another option, but we know with that being an AP that that's not necessarily accessible to everyone, and that's one of our goals, is to make sure that we have a course like Environmental Science accessible to everyone. This generation of students is extremely active in regards to global and environmental issues. It's something that we see regularly. It's actually something that really stands out when you think about this generation. This course would give students an opportunity to discuss and explore these topics in greater detail. It gives them a forum for that. We know that things like climate change and depletion of natural resources are problems facing this generation that they're ultimately going to have to solve. With the level of interest we see in those type of issues, we think it's a great idea to offer a course where they can do that. Traditionally, for the sciences, students have followed the path of biochem physics for their first 3 science courses. We don't hold anyone to that, but that's typically the sequence that they follow, similar to probably the sequence most of us followed. We don't really have choice in the sciences until the junior year. So when we talk about things like choice and student voice, we hear that with the sciences. We know there's room to grow here. Environmental science is a course that would be available to sophomores, so that would change. They would have a choice instead of, say, chemistry or physics in the sophomore year. That would be especially helpful for students who would benefit from an additional year of math before entering into the chemistry or the physics courses. We know right now within a typical chemistry course you have students who are in 3 different years of mathematics. So that presents challenges both for the students and for the instruction in those courses. So this provides an opportunity for students to have an additional math course under their belt before they enter into those heavy math-based science courses like chemistry and physics. So I just want to talk a little bit about the big differences between this course and the AP Environmental Science. Right now, we're not looking to propose an honors level of this course. The AP Environmental Science is accessible to a large number of students. It's considered to be one of the more accessible AP course offerings. That said, there's still a very fast pace to the course. There's a set curriculum, and there's the test at the end. There's also biochem and a level of math that's included in that course. They do things like water testing and things like that. So it's not necessarily accessible to all students. The CP version of this would also allow students to have an opportunity to investigate current events and things going on in the world and have the time to do that. For example, the climate report was just released about a week ago. So that would be something they would dig into and talk about and discuss. Not that you can't do that in the AP level, but you are still held to getting to the end of the year by the end of the year. So it's a little bit more challenging to do some of those things. So that said, having an honors level in between would be very challenging to try to differentiate the difference between that and an AP level of that course and the CP level of this course. So right now the proposal is to offer a college prep level of environmental science, which provides the additional opportunities for students that I shared earlier, and continue to offer the AP Environmental Science as another higher level course for environmental. I'm happy to take questions about environmental science.
Thank you again for the presentation. I'm really excited about this course. Would you like to?
Yes, sorry, just a quick question. I agree. This, I think, is an amazing addition and a nice option, because chemistry can be challenging for all the reasons you just articulated. And if you're not interested in hard science, this provides kind of a broader. I just wanted to know, is there, and besides AP Environmental Science, is there another environmental science class?
Not really.
Okay, because I think given the demand and interest, and especially around the policy side of the environment, that could be an additional type of class or elective to look at if one doesn't exist.
Isn't, I thought sustainability and ecology were part of this, is that?
Oh, as part of this course?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are topics that they would talk about for sure.
But this isn't just in this class.
Yeah, so I mean, environmental science course is a science course that would look at different environmental systems. So I would think it's still it's a hard science class. But I think if you're talking about looking at, sort of policy kinds of issues, or that would be like an environmental studies course as opposed to an environmental science course, and you can lean, it looked to me, although I didn't look at that, there was some of this, the aspects of environmental studies it looked like a human environment course heavier on the environmental side, but you could imagine one that would be more, it could even be in a social studies, dare I say, course.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you
for being.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks again. It's my understanding the strategic plan is looking over the graduation requirements. Is that right? You haven't come forward yet with it's got a kind of iffy. So it was my understanding that was one of the things that we were going to be looking at going forward. And as of right now, it's 3 sciences, right, you have to take? And so are we suggesting that this is probably going to replace one of so?
It could.
So a student would go through and not take chemistry, for example? Could go through?
They could choose to do that, yes.
So, I mean, I think rather than this being elective like we sometimes have in other concentrations or other disciplines, math, you take algebra 1, you take algebra 2, you take geometry, whatever. There's an expectation that you're going to take those certain courses to complete your math requirement. I'm not sure, I don't know quite how I feel one way or the other about this, but I think it's part of a bigger discussion about what we want our students exposed to before they leave. And, the state has already said biology is something we have to make sure that our students are exposed to. Do we want to make sure that all our kids have had chemistry before they leave us? I'm not asking for the answer right now, but I do think it's a bigger question, and it's one that, maybe the curriculum committee can grapple with. And as moving forward in the presentation, we're going to have some stuff on English as well. And it looks, again, that there are going to be certain English courses that could be replaced by other English courses. And again, do we want to, to me, it's a bigger question about what do we expect our students to have when they walk out the door as a Lower Merion grad. So if I'm a school or I'm an employer, what am I expecting that student to have had when they walk out the door? And if we're losing chemistry in that conversation, I think we need to talk about it.
So I think there's a tension there. And the tension is between wanting to make sure that students have an opportunity to express their personal interest. Go back to my 10,000 hours. And there's a tension between that and the canon, and that canon doesn't only exist in literacy, it can exist in what kinds of social studies, what kinds of history, what kinds of science, and so forth. I think it's really unfortunate that the state decided that everybody had to get a keystone in biology, mostly because they've pushed a requirement that generates a test which is largely a vocabulary test as opposed to a process-oriented test. I think that's an unfortunate situation, and speaking somewhat as a former history teacher, I think, if you're going to require something, require civics and give a test on that. But having said that, I think every time we look at courses and we look at organization, it's a graduation requirement question. What is it that we want? When you look at the English, as you pointed out, we're starting to look at choice, but we haven't abandoned skills. So that there still has to be certain skills within those choices. We know that to be considered well-read in today's society, there's a canon in which you need to have. So the question is, how much true chemistry do you need? And I think that's part of the debate. And right now, we're coming down on the side that says you need biology because the state says so. You don't really need chemistry because the state says so, and this is an alternative to that. Is that a fair statement, Jason?
That's fair.
And so as we, better say it's fair. And so as we continue through the course explorations, I think that you're going to see a constant tension between what is it we want every kid to know and what is it we want every kid to feel good about knowing.
So then are you saying that this is now the time to have this conversation, or, because it's,
This is a curriculum committee kind of question. First
well,
of all, that's
I mean,
not
that
even-
was
But I
my
also think it's
suggestion.
already part of the discussion, because you're not required to take chemistry. You're required to take 3 years, and you could be taking it with something else. And there's a lot of discussion now, around looking at more integrative, that it's perhaps more useful for students to have an integrative approach to science and focus science on kind of real-world solutions, and kids specialize at different points in time. So I don't think these are kind of new necessarily conversations, but the requirement is the 3 years. The requirement
Well, it is
not-
3 years, but we've only really offered biology, chemistry, physics.
No, we have
flavors of physics and environmental science. Is there another science besides those four?
Don't we, or offer for, isn't there forensic?
We have different electives that
Yeah.
come in every other year, so the kids can
That
take
aren't one of
those too.
those four?
In the sophomore year, students can choose right now to take chemistry or physics.
Right.
And then
So
the
that's
third
part
year,
of those
the
four.
third year, they don't have to take the other third one. They can take something else. They could take meteorology, oceanography,
Geography, there's a lot.
geology. We have all kinds of different things they can take.
But I think within the context of the strategic plan and graduation requirements, these are larger kinds of issues. As are, I think, the issue of how many, do you have a discussion, as you raised earlier, Diane, not only for, I think, ninth graders, but other kids, around how many AP courses do you allow a student to take at a given time? And all, I think that's a big question, so I agree with your questions. But I'm really excited to see this course, so. And I'm also excited to see the courses that are coming up as well. We can go to that.
Jason is too.
So, no, I thank you very much, Jason, appreciate it. And of course, we had the curriculum committee meeting, but it's always exciting when new courses come up, because it's very few of us decided to run in order to be able to talk about things like, I don't know,
Well, thank you.
sidewalks or buses and that kind of stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Leslie Pratt for the new English courses and changes to that English structure.
So, good evening, everyone. I am very excited to share information about 3 new courses that will be offered as a part of our English program. And I'm excited for 2 reasons. One, I think these are wonderful courses that really do echo the importance of choice and voice in students' experience. And also because these courses are part of a larger shift in our curricular program. So we think about the work that flows from a wellspring of student interest, as well as works to honor the things that we value in terms of an instructional core for students. And the courses that we're going to share are working on both of those levels. So what exactly does that mean, that the work is part of a larger structural shift in the English, in the high school English department? Let me just give an example. So 2 years ago, we came before the board and the entire 9th grade English program was reframed in light of the strategic plan. It moved from a traditional genre-based course to a course that was framed by thematic questions. This year, for the first time ever in the history of our English Language Arts program, 11th and 12th grade students are mixed in AP courses. So 11th graders can take either AP Lit or Lang, and 12th graders could take either AP Lit or Lang. And that becomes a precursor to the exciting work next year, where these choice courses will be open up to 11th and 12th graders across the board. So the courses that I'm going to share with you will be open to both 11th and 12th graders, and students will be able to move into those classes based on their interest, not just guided by their age and grade level at a particular moment. So these structural shifts, they are different, and they help us move away from some of the experiences students had a mere 3 years ago in the district. So 3 years ago, there was much more prescription, and the choices were considerably limited. Before I talk specifically about these courses, I also wanted to share another structural element that I think is important. In our program, Guide of Studies, we have long had semester elective courses in ELA. And so the question is, isn't that enough? Aren't we already offering choice through our electives? There are two dilemmas that we needed to confront head-on in this process. One, a semester elective course became challenging to schedule for students who are really passionate about taking additional English courses. And as single semester courses, it became challenging to fit into students' schedule. And then on the opposite side, students who might be really passionate about one of the elective courses, they were struggling to fit it into their schedule, especially if they didn't consider themselves English students, if they had to take it as their second English course. And so those were two elements of choice that we recognized and had in our mind's eye as we tried to work through these new course proposals. So these 3 courses are deeply inspired by the strategic plan. And as with any shift that is guided by a vision, we need to start with our why. And so what we have behind us is the articulation of our why. It focuses highly on choice and voice, which is something that Mr. Copeland has referenced, it's something that Mr. Lilly has referenced, it's something that Dr. Evselog has referenced, and it's not just a talking point. It is core to the work that we've done. We've surveyed students, we've tried to determine what is it that they are interested in exploring, and how can we as educators work to meet those needs. What I'd also like to highlight is the elements on the last 4 bullet points there. One, that our ELA standards can be taught through a range of texts, and that the ELA standards in 11th and 12th grade are banded standards. So what that means is the way the state writes the standards for 11th and 12th grade students, there's one set of standards that are the 11th and 12th grade standards, and students are meant to work through those recursively each year. And so there isn't a discrete set of this is what 11th graders do and this is what 12th graders do. So in a lot of ways, our program of studies aligns even more closely to the state standards. I also just wanted to highlight the emphasis on motivation and engagement that's really highlighted in those last 3 bullet points. We know from research that if students are interested or if they have a degree of background knowledge, they are able and willing to engage in more challenging texts and tasks. We know that students are willing to write in ways that are more passionate and thoughtful, engaged, when they have a sense of ownership in their writing and they see themselves as writers, not just as students of writing. And we also recognize the kind of sad fact that after high school, students may never again read a literary text, especially if they're not going into the humanities. And so we have a responsibility to cultivate the interests and affinities that lead people to become lifelong readers, that we want people reading long into their adult life so that their minds are a more interesting playground to live in for the rest of their lives. Throughout our process, whenever the work got challenging, we turned to these guiding principles. What you see before you now is just kind of an overview, a grid that maps out some of the structural shifts that I described during the first slide. And I highlight this because it is a more kind of bulleted look. And I wanted to share two particular elements from this slide. One is the number of course options that are available to our students. So if we look at 11th grade non-IB students, they currently have 3 course options. You have a choice of one of 3 courses that you could take. As we move forward, students in 11th and 12th grade will have 8 different course options. And next year, the rising juniors will have 9 because the traditional English 3 class will remain in the program planning guide for 1 additional year so that students who are really invested in taking that American literature course with the rhetoric basis that has existed for a long time, students who are really looking forward to that class will still have an option to take it should they want to. And then that course will sunset just in time for a revamp of the 10th grade curriculum, which will pick up the American literature focus that will move out of 11th grade. Another element that I wanted to highlight on this particular chart is the last row. Something that the team spent a lot of time thinking about in terms of the center of our program is how do we offer an opportunity to foreground discussions of race, culture, and identity in classes. And so the first course that I'm going to share with you is a Voices in African American Literature class. But before I talk about that class, I did want to share that programmatically, discussions of race, culture, and identity are embedded within our literature selections already across all of our classes. And the goal in the race, culture, and identity class is to foreground some of those decisions that are always present in the back of our minds as we're selecting texts and having conversations about challenging representations in character, theme, and experience. So before I move on to the description of our first course, I wanted to provide you that background. So this course, Voices in African American Literature, explores how literary character and theme are shaped by gender, race, and/or class experiences and expectations in texts written by African American authors. So to echo a question that Mr. Bonaventuro asked earlier in the presentation, this course, like all new 11th and 12th grade courses, will include certain structural frames that guarantee the foundational and what Mr. Copeland had called some of those canonical experiences that we want students to leave Lower Merion with, even as they are offered choice in the topics and the topical ways that they will get those underlying skills. So each of those courses will have 4 major guaranteed writing experiences that include a literary analysis, a research or synthesis piece, a creative assignment, and an argumentative piece. That's a non-negotiable underlying part of the frame for all of these new courses, regardless of topic. Each of the new courses also structures in what I'm calling a 3-prong reading frame. And so what that means is each course will have 2 to 3 core required texts, regardless of teacher, regardless of section, regardless if you take this course junior year or senior year. There'll be certain guaranteed texts that function as a touchstone in the course that every student will have whole class access and experience in working through. The second prong is a list of 5 to 8 ancillary texts that teachers will select between and among, and they'll use that for whole class discussion, small group work. That's where we start to do literary analysis work in literary circles. There's also a collection of independent reading selections as we work to build both classroom libraries as well as make recommendations to our school librarian to continue to amplify our collections. And the ultimate goal is to have a living, breathing discussion about the text where books move between and among those 3 different kind of book sets, so that we're not waiting 6 or 7 years to refresh a curriculum, but we're always thinking about, wow, this book really has people's attention right now. Should it move from ancillary to core? Wow, this core text, seems to be something that, we've done for 3 or 4 years. It might need to be refreshed. Should we look at what were the hot picks in independent, moving independent to ancillary and ancillary to core? So we're trying to structurally create opportunities. Okay. In light of some of those frames, right now the team is considering what might be a few course texts, and I just wanted to share with you, these are some of the core course texts that are currently under consideration. And so would this course include excerpts from The Souls of Black Folk as a foundational element to understand the idea of the double consciousness as a way to read some of the other pieces of literature we'll read? Passing by Nella Larson. Beloved by Toni Morrison, Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. So those are just kind of a smattering of some of the texts that the department is reading and discussing right now. The next course is entitled Film and Literature. So film and literature, just like voices in African American literature, has guaranteed writing experiences. It also has that 3-pronged reading approach. In this particular course, it balances equally between the study of film and literature, and it hones students' ability to closely read across a variety of media. So this is a text for a student who is really interested in close reading, and they're still going to have exposure to canonical literature. They will still have exposure to some of the skill-based close reading lessons you might see in a traditional English class. Some of the medium are going to be visual medium. So this course, in a very Ferrerian sense, kind of explodes the definition of text and the way we read the word and the world. And so some of the texts that are under consideration for this course include Harrison's adaptations from short story to big screen, which is a short story collection of famous canonical short stories from everyone from Dubus to Hemingway, whose short stories have been adapted into either full-length films or film shorts. A Shakespearean play with at least 2 adaptations to film. What does it mean to take a text that was written hundreds of years ago and to think about it being portrayed through the medium of film on the stage? And what becomes interesting is in the 11th and 12th grade Bandit standards, that particular skill is called out explicitly. Like, what does it mean to read a canonical work of drama in more than one medium, in more than one mode, and to think about the difference between variants. So this course addresses that specifically. And something like Golden's Reading in the Dark, which is an overview of close reading in literature and film and where the parallels are. Bless you. The third course that I'm going to share with you is a course entitled Sports and Society. So Sports and Society is a topically based, literature and literarily rich course. So this course, as Mr. Copeland has pointed out, has existed previously in our program planning guide as a 1-semester elective. And so the course was piloted at Lower Merion High School as a year-long course, and this is the course that will be offered next year as a full-year course at Lower Merion High School. The following year, it will be offered as a full-year course offering at both Lower Merion and Harriton High School. And some of those choices around which courses at which moment, we're working to be really thoughtful in trying to make sure whatever courses we're putting in the program planning guide, we're more likely to offer them. And with the complexity of the IB schedule, having one fewer offering in that first year just helps us navigate the complexities of the schedule a little bit more easily. Okay. So in this course, in Sports and Society, learners explore works of literature as well as long-form nonfiction pieces. So this course balances literature as well as nonfiction. The focus is on high interest, self-selected as well as teacher-selected topics and texts that connect to how sports shape culture or how culture shapes sport. So a few of the course texts that are currently under consideration are things like The Brothers K by Duncan. Kind of wonderful metaphor in terms of baseball, kind of the backwards K as a symbol for strikeout, and how we use some of those metaphors from baseball to work through kind of family dynamics. Into Thin Air by Krackhauser, which for a long time was part of our 11th grade English course. So to think about the idea of kind of hiking and physical activity in sport. So the definition of sport is really big and open. Friday Night Lights by Bissinger. Like, what does it mean to take a kind of classic football story that gets classically written in a nonfiction form and then got adapted into a film? Like, what would it mean if there was some pairing across the two courses? To think about something like Moneyball. And so the text of Moneyball looks radically different than the Moneyball kids might know in film. And so to talk about a lesson in rhetoric, you have a potentially rich analysis with Moneyball. Or you could do Boys in the Boat. If you remember 3 years ago, Boys in the Boat was our one book when it was sponsored by the Social Studies Department. And so we have some opportunity for some wonderful interactions between our English and Social Studies Department. And that list, like all of the tentative reading lists I've given you, those are kind of the short, tentative, talking titles right now. But we also have a department of 40 English teachers who love to do nothing but read and talk about books. I do think I scared Dr. Evslag once when he walked into my office and a book vetting order had just come in. He's like, that's a lot of books. So the programmatic impact is, I think, best understood when we look at these visuals. I think we can understand kind of the largesse of these programmatic changes that we're trying to make by looking at what the course sequence looks like over time and how it's evolved. So in 2018, 2019, just last year, a relatively traditional underclassmen sequence. English 1, English 2, you could either take English 3, honors, or college prep, and AP. All three of those courses were American literature courses with a rhetoric focus at different levels. So kind of same course, different degree of independent demand, but basically the same course. And then in 12th grade, your choices opened up. And those 12th grade courses worked through slightly different framings. So the reading and writing nonfiction course frame isn't parallel to the modern and contemporary course. There's nothing that kind of fully holds those courses together as a 12th grade unit, and that's some of the work that we've rectified by thinking through what frames all of our courses and holds our program together. So we're not just offering individual courses, but we're guiding students through a program that provides them choice with how they'll meet those programmatic demands. If we look at this year's schedule, 9th grade, 10th grade, still core experiences because there is value in students leaving our district with certain core experiences. There are things that we do in 9th and 10th grade that we want every student to know and experience before they leave. This year in 11th grade, you can see we open up AP Literature, we open up AP Language, and that also means AP Literature and AP Language is open in 12th grade. This is dipping our toe into combining 11th and 12th grade students in a single class, something that happens in a lot of different disciplines, but has been very new for the English department. It's not the way our program has worked. This is, I think, where the sequence gets really exciting. So to think about next year, English 1, English 2, next year, 9 courses that 11th graders can select between and among. And just to highlight again, notice Sports and Society, for 1 year only, it will only be offered at Lower Merion. And in 12th grade, it's the exact same courses minus English 3. And then thinking even longer term, by 21-22, we'll have English 1. By that point in time, we will have a revised transformative English 2, which will be American literature based. It will still emphasize the rhetoric standards. And we will have all of the current offerings. Plus, there is discussion among the department to offer creative writing as a year-long credit within that same framework, as well as a great books course entitled Books That Change the World. And so with that being said, quite simply, it's an exciting time for our program. I'm delighted and excited to share this with you, and I'm also happy to take any questions that you have for me.
So thank you very much for the presentation, and I think it's really very exciting to see how the strategic plan is being implemented in this area in terms of, student interest and grouping students differently and, ensuring that these core skills are there, but in ways in which students can kind of learn through their own choice and interests. And they sound like fabulous classes. So I think Deborah has a question. Oh. Oh, okay. I thought I was just let me say thank you before I. Okay. Are there any other questions at this time? David, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, that sounds very, very exciting. Just a couple questions. As it stands now, where are, when you have the course offerings like in a syllabus, for like the African American literature course, will you list the authors that will be in the course? The books that will be read? For instance, there must be overlap. For instance, just explain how that would work, because they wouldn't be to the exclusion of other courses, right? I mean, for instance, like Baldwin, Ells, and Haley Hughes, they'd be offered in various courses throughout the high. How's that work currently?
So right now, we have, right now in our program planning guide, we offer a description of each individual course. We try to make that description as meaningful and as detailed as possible. And in fact, we have a meeting in probably a week and a half where we're looking at how do we tighten and refine the expectations around the program planning guide. In terms of which texts and authors occur in which course, we do want students to get breadth and depth across their experiences, and there are some authors that might be echoed across different courses. For example, Toni Morrison is one of the literary stars of our time. That students having a touch on the work of Toni Morrison is important to us, and Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon is in the AP Literature course. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye is in Modern and Contemporary Literature, because what if students want to take AP Lit and Modern and Contemporary Literature? And in the Voices in African American Literature course, the text we're talking about is Beloved. And so if we have students who are then taking multiple English courses, they might get a touch on the same author, but they would have exposure to different texts. And then the research elements that we're building into the course, there are opportunities for students to go deeper and do an author study should they want.
But David, I think your question was you want to make sure that all of the African American literature isn't taken out of the existing courses and moved only to that course, isn't that?
Well, it's part of my question.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. That would still be
that it's still purposeful throughout the rest of the curriculum, and that is correct.
That is correct.
What was the other part of your question?
Just in terms of the way the syllabi are written or the courses are put together, is it? I don't want to date myself, but it's always like either like 19th century literature or 18th century American literature. Or how I mean, like, where is Melville still taught? I mean, like that kind
Melville is not still taught.
Right. I mean, that's like the greatest American novel ever. But, well, some people think that. A lot of people think that. Well, you could have an argument on that one. But. But you know what I'm saying, that's all.
So right now in the program planning guide, the titles that you see in the presentation are the titles. The general description that we have is the general language that will go into the program planning guide. And then in the curricular documents, those get fleshed out in even more detail. And then there's a working syllabi that students would be able to see before they select courses.
That sounds great. Thank you.
course, I got to ask a question. God forbid I not. So I actually have a couple questions. So I think you kind of answered the first part of my question was whether these were going to have the same rigor as English 3. You know, I want to make sure that, for lack of a better term, they don't become fluff courses, that they are rigorous, and that the content allows it to become more rigorous because it's going to be more interesting to the students. So
That has been the frame.
but then to take that sort of the next step, is it going to be offered in levels? Is it going to be college prep and honors, or?
Yes.
Okay, so each of these, so it's really 18 courses, not 9, because it's on
Yes.
2 levels. Okay, so then it gets to my question from previously about, do we have enough students to populate? Well, I mean, let me just back up and say, these are all sound fabulous. I mean, I took a course in college called Superman, which is basically your heroes and monsters course, but they called it Superman to catch your eye and get you to take it. But, you know, you read Beowulf and then you read Superman, right?
Yep.
So the comic book, it was anyway. So I think it's awesome. I just think, you know, we want to be careful that we don't go back to where we were 15, 20 years ago, where we had 12 different offerings in English and we couldn't fill them because we had too many. So I just want to make sure that you're confident that we're going to be able to fill these at both schools, or, you know, that.
The department has done outreach to students to catch their interest. And there may also be a rare opportunity, as I understand it, where a college prep and an honors course may be taught at the same time with different requirements to deal with the fact that you might have small numbers in a particular period.
Right, yeah, that would be great, because that, I mean, we've done that before in different things, and that might be a good way to do it. And, you know, then you get some really interesting discussion in the classrooms that way. So, yeah, no, this is all great, so thank you.
So, Mr. Copeland, I think you've said in the past, and when you came here, you were surprised to see like students take 5 sciences. But when I see this English, I see students who could take 5 or 6 English classes. And is that something we're looking to try to get?
I think it would be great if kids had the opportunity to walk out of Lower Marion or Harrington High School with 7 or 8 full-year English courses under their belt, just as they do with science. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, all of
Thank
you,
you.
both of you, for the presentations. So, is Scott getting up to talk? Are you speaking, Mr. Eversluck? Okay. Just checking. Okay, so at this time, I would like to offer anyone in the audience who would like to speak, to come on up. If you could please sign in with Ms. LaPera. When you get to the podium, please tell us your name and generally in the district where you live. 3 minutes. So, welcome.
I won't use up nearly that much time. I'm Sam Catania. I'm a senior at Harrington High School. I just had a few questions related to the course changes. I'm really excited about them. I think everything's moving in the right direction. From English, I just wanted to know, currently there's a journalism elective. I just wanted to see if that's staying in the curriculum. I know that's typically been a half-year course, and so I just noticed that wasn't on the docket, but I also know it's an elective, so it might not be. Yes.
English will still be offered.
Yes.
So Sam,
Hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you ask the question?
Ask and then, no problem, certainly. Yep. So journalism, just wanted to check in on that. And then also, one course I've heard a lot of students expressed interest in over the years, a course that I've been interested in, is a public speaking course, which I think would fall under the English department. And I just think it would be really interesting to experiment with adding that, since I think there would be a really high degree of interest. That's all I have.
Thanks, Sam. Do you want to answer now? Or?
It's a good idea, Sam. You can come back and teach it.
But what about journalism?
The 1 semester electives will remain open.
So Okay.
But I actually do like the public speaking one. I think that's
I do too.
that's a good idea.
Hello, everyone. I'm Graham. I'm representing Heritage Student Council. I'm the president. And I had two things that I wanted to comment on. One was I personally have maxed out on comp sci courses at Heritage. And going in as a freshman, I didn't really have that much comp sci experience at all. And I can say that it's been a really enriching course. But I know some of my peers, they can code circles around everyone in that class. And they're like comp sci wizards. And even as freshmen, they were better than some of the seniors. And I think that if there was some way where students could test directly into AP Comp Sci A, that would be great. Because as of now, there are juniors who they're thinking about next year, and they want to do Comp Sci, but they want to max out or do as many APs as they can, and they want to get as rigorous a course in Comp Sci as possible. So they informally bypass Comp Sci 1 and 2 and just go straight into AP Comp Sci A. But I think there should be a more formalized process for that rather than, I don't know how they do it, but I know that technically they're not allowed to, but they still do. And so I think if there's a way to test into higher levels, especially if we're going to add more, that would be great. Also, I talked to a few of my teachers, and this would be an idea for the far future, but some sort of life skills class, because from Heritage, looking back on my education so far, it's a lot of how to think and how to analyze information rather than really applicable information. I think having a balance is nice. So I think if we had a class that was how do you file a W-2, how do you jump your car, stuff that I didn't figure out until my dad had to yell at me and said, how do you not know this? So I think those two things would be a great addition to our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. All right, well, thank you, everybody. And I'm looking at our upcoming meetings we have, I can't figure this out. We have a November 14th facilities and purchasing committee meeting and then, of course, the evening, November 18th, regular business board meeting at 8 p.m. Sorry about that. And with that, we are adjourned. Everyone have a good evening.